Ladies and gentlemen, we often think of rejection as a simple, singular event, something we can walk away from and never look back on. But rejection is not as straightforward as it seems. For those on the receiving end, it is a profound experience. And in many ways, the pain of rejection isn't just in the words or actions themselves, but in what happens after the silence. Vulnerability is often viewed as a weakness, something we need to protect ourselves from at all costs. It's seen as exposing ourselves to potential harm, a place where we might be judged, ridiculed, or abandoned. We fear it because it requires us to be open, to share parts of ourselves that might not fit the ideal image we've carefully constructed. But what if I told you that vulnerability, far from being a weakness, is actually the greatest source of our strength? It is the birthplace of courage, authenticity, and connection. When we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we invite realness into our lives. We let go of the facades we've built to shield ourselves from the pain of rejection or judgment. It's only when we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, imperfections, flaws, and all that we can experience the deep sense of belonging that we crave. It's when we embrace vulnerability that we make room for others to do the same. And in doing so, we create the kind of relationships that are grounded in authenticity, trust, and mutual respect. It's also important to recognize that vulnerability is not just about sharing our weaknesses, it's also about sharing our desires, our dreams, our hopes for the future. It's about saying, "This is me. This is what I want, what I long for." It's a risk. There's always the chance that we won't be understood, or worse, that we'll be rejected. But it's through that very act of putting ourselves out there that we allow the possibility of true connection. When we choose to be vulnerable, we open the door to deeper, more meaningful experiences, not just with others, but also with ourselves. One of the most transformative aspects of vulnerability is that it invites us to show up imperfectly. We no longer have to strive for some ideal version of ourselves that doesn't actually exist. We stop hiding behind perfection and instead embrace the messy, complex, and beautiful reality of being human. This shift can be incredibly freeing. It allows us to let go of the weight of unrealistic expectations, to stop pretending, and to simply exist as we are. And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we send a message to others that they too can let go of their armor and show up as their true selves. However, this vulnerability is not always met with the understanding we hope for. It requires courage to take that first step, especially when we fear the potential for rejection or misunderstanding. But when we engage with vulnerability, we learn something profound. That the very act of being open, of allowing ourselves to be seen, is enough to foster deeper connection. Even when the outcome is uncertain, vulnerability creates space for others to show up too. It encourages empathy, compassion, and most importantly, a recognition of shared humanity. When we're vulnerable, we give others the chance to respond, not just with their words, but with their hearts. And in that space, we are truly seen and understood. Silence can sometimes feel like a neutral space, a pause in the conversation where no words are spoken. But in reality, silence is never truly neutral. It carries weight. When we choose silence, especially after a moment of rejection or emotional tension, it speaks volumes. It can communicate 1,000 things without uttering a single word. Often it says, "I don't have the energy or the words to continue," or "I'm not willing to engage with you right now." In this way, silence can become a powerful form of disconnection. For the person on the receiving end, silence can feel like abandonment. When we withhold communication, whether intentionally or out of discomfort, we unknowingly create a chasm. The space between us grows wider, and the sense of distance can be painful. It leaves the other person to interpret what's happening, to fill in the gaps with their own insecurities, fears, and doubts. It's in these moments that the mind tends to spiral. searching for answers to questions that are left unasked. Did I say something wrong? Am I not worthy of an explanation? Why am I being ignored? Silence, rather than creating space for healing, can perpetuate confusion and emotional isolation. In some cases, we stay silent because we're saying the wrong thing or causing more harm. We might believe that by saying nothing, we're protecting the other person from further hurt. But the truth is, silence often leaves more room for pain than any uncomfortable conversation could. When we fail to acknowledge someone's feelings or provide them with clarity, we deny them the opportunity to process, heal, and move forward. Without communication, they're left in the dark, unsure of where they stand or what went wrong. Silence can also reinforce feelings of shame. When we cut off communication, the other person may start to internalize the silence as a reflection of their own worth or value. They may start to believe that they were not important enough to receive an explanation, that their feelings didn't matter, or that they are unworthy of the simple dignity of being heard. This can create a deep sense of disconnection, not just from the person who chose silence, but from themselves as well. They may begin to doubt their own ability to connect with others in the future, seeing silence as an indication that they are fundamentally flawed or incapable of building meaningful relationships. The thing about silence is that it leaves too much room for interpretation. It fosters a gap in communication that we are often too afraid to fill. It's easier to stay quiet than to face the discomfort of a hard conversation, but this avoidance only makes the problem worse. Silence doesn't heal, it isolates. It doesn't bring clarity, it breeds uncertainty. When we choose to stay silent in the face of rejection or emotional distress, we risk losing not just the moment, but the potential for true connection. It's the absence of empathy, the lack of acknowledgement, and the withholding of the very thing that could bridge the divide, communication. Compassionate communication is the bridge that connects us when everything else seems to separate us. It's the practice of speaking and listening with an open heart with the intention of understanding rather than being understood. When we communicate with compassion, we are offering not just our words, but our presence, our attention, and our empathy. It's not about trying to fix or solve. It's about recognizing the humanity in the other person and responding with care and understanding. At its core, compassionate communication is about recognizing that we are all navigating our own struggles and vulnerabilities. It involves seeing the other person as more than just an individual in front of us. It's seeing them as a person who is carrying their own emotional weight, their own history, and their own needs. When we communicate with compassion, we allow space for the other person's feelings, their experiences, and their humanity. We are not just responding to what they say, but also to what they feel, to the unspoken parts of their message that might be rooted in fear, sadness, or longing. One of the most important aspects of compassionate communication is listening. Listening with full attention, without rushing to interrupt or offer solutions, is a profound act of kindness. It requires us to quiet our own inner dialogue, to set aside our judgments, and to simply be present with the other person. Compassionate listening allows us to truly hear what the other person is saying, not just the words, but the emotions and the stories behind them. It's in this space of deep listening that we can offer the most meaningful response, one that is rooted in understanding rather than defensiveness or assumption. When we communicate compassionately, we also choose our words with care. It's easy to slip into patterns of judgment or criticism, especially when we are feeling hurt, frustrated, or overwhelmed. But words have power. The way we speak can either build bridges or create walls. Compassionate communication invites us to speak from a place of kindness, even when the conversation is difficult. It doesn't mean avoiding difficult truths or pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. Instead, it means being honest and clear, but also gentle. It's about sharing our feelings in a way that acknowledges the other person's feelings and inviting dialogue rather than creating conflict. Compassionate communication is also about being aware of our own emotional state and how it affects our interactions with others. When we are triggered, upset, or defensive, it can be easy to lash out or withdraw into silence. But compassionate communication asks us to pause, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with our values and intentions. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to the world around us, and that choosing compassion can transform difficult moments into opportunities for growth and connection. In difficult conversations, compassionate communication can be a healing force. It helps to acknowledge pain and discomfort without judgment, and it creates space for emotional expression and understanding. It also helps to reduce defensiveness and opens the door to vulnerability. When we approach a conversation with compassion, we invite the other person to do the same. We create a shared space where both of us can speak openly and honestly without fear of being dismissed or invalidated. It's in these moments that true connection happens, where we find common ground, where we build trust, and where we show each other that we are worthy of being heard, seen, and respected. Ultimately, compassionate communication is not just about what we say, it's about how we say it and the intention behind it. It's about creating relationships that are built on mutual respect, empathy, and understanding. It's about seeing the other person as a partner in the conversation rather than an opponent. And it's about recognizing that every conversation is an opportunity to connect on a deeper level, to build trust, and to create a space where both parties can feel safe and valued. Compassionate communication is not always easy. It requires vulnerability, courage, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. But it is in those moments of courage that we find the potential for deeper connection, healing, and growth. The fear of confrontation is something many of us grapple with on a regular basis. It's an emotional response that often arises when we anticipate conflict or discomfort. It's the unease we feel in our stomachs when we know a difficult conversation is on the horizon, the hesitation we experience before speaking up, and the avoidance of situations where we might have to address tension. Confrontation in our minds often feels like a battleground where emotions clash, where things get ugly, and where we might say or do things we regret. So we avoid it. We hide from it. We pretend it's not there. But in doing so, we miss the opportunity to address issues head on, to clear misunderstandings, and to create the space for healing. At the root of this fear is a fundamental concern: the fear of hurting someone or being hurt ourselves. When we anticipate confrontation, we imagine a loss of connection. We worry that speaking our truth might push someone away, create distance, or even sever a relationship. We fear that by addressing an issue, we will make the other person feel rejected, judged, or inadequate. This fear is rooted in the desire to protect ourselves and others from pain, but the irony is that by avoiding confrontation, we often allow the very issues we fear to grow larger and more destructive. When we avoid confronting difficult issues, we allow resentment to build. We bottle up our feelings until they explode in ways that are often more harmful than if we'd addressed the situation calmly and directly from the beginning. The fear of confrontation can create a silent distance between people, a space where unspoken grievances fester and where misunderstandings multiply. It leaves us feeling misunderstood, disconnected, and ultimately unseen. What's worse, we begin to carry the weight of these unresolved issues on our shoulders, and over time, it erodes our sense of trust in the relationship. We may start to wonder if speaking up is even worth it, or if the cost of confronting the issue is simply too high. Part of the fear also stems from a lack of confidence in our ability to handle the situation well. We worry that we won't say the right thing, that we might escalate the issue, or that we will make things worse rather than better. We feel ill-equipped to navigate the emotional complexity of the conversation. But the truth is, no one is born knowing how to handle difficult conversations with ease. It's a skill we develop over time, through practice, and through the willingness to engage even when it feels uncomfortable. The more we lean into our discomfort and practice confronting issues with empathy, the less paralyzing the fear becomes. Another layer of this fear is the fear of rejection of our feelings, not being validated, or our perspectives not being understood. When we feel that our truth might not be accepted, or that the person we're confronting will dismiss our feelings, it makes the confrontation feel even more threatening. This fear can leave us trapped in a cycle of silence where we suppress our emotions and avoid the risk of being vulnerable. We convince ourselves that it's easier to just go along with things, to suppress our needs to keep the peace. But by doing so, we deny ourselves the opportunity to express our true selves, and we deny the other person the chance to understand us more deeply. And yet, despite the discomfort and fear that confrontation brings, it is often the catalyst for growth. Confrontation is an invitation to clarity. It is the moment where we can redefine boundaries, express our needs, and bring our relationships into a deeper sense of honesty and connection. It's not about fighting or being right, it's about understanding and resolution. Confrontation, when done thoughtfully with compassion and respect, has the power to bring us closer to each other, to deepen trust, and to create more meaningful, authentic connections. The fear of confrontation holds us back from realizing that difficult conversations are not something to be feared. They are opportunities to strengthen relationships and to build resilience. Yes, they are challenging. Yes, they may be uncomfortable, but avoiding them only perpetuates the cycle of disconnection and misunderstanding. When we choose to face these fears, to lean into discomfort, we learn that the worst-case scenario is rarely as dire as we imagine. Instead, we find that our capacity to handle confrontation with grace, honesty, and compassion grows, and we emerge from these conversations with stronger, more authentic relationships. Rejection is something we all experience at some point in our lives, but it is often much more than a momentary sting. The unspoken impact of rejection can ripple through a person's life in ways that are not immediately visible, and its effects can last far longer than the initial event. When someone is rejected, whether it's from a relationship, a job opportunity, or a social circle, the emotional and psychological toll extends beyond the rejection itself. The person left behind doesn't just carry the memory of the event, they carry the lingering questions, the self-doubt, and the internalized feelings that often accompany it. The first and perhaps most profound impact of rejection is the feeling of inadequacy that follows. Rejection challenges a person's sense of worth. It whispers in the mind that they are not good enough, not valuable enough, not deserving of love, respect, or opportunity. This can create an internal narrative that gets louder and louder with time, drowning out the voice that reminds them of their intrinsic worth. For many, this self-doubt doesn't just fade, it becomes a lens through which they begin to view themselves and their interactions with others. Every word, every action becomes a potential judgment. They begin to question their place in the world and whether they will ever be seen for who they truly are. Another unspoken effect of rejection is the deep sense of loneliness it fosters. Rejection often makes people feel invisible, as if they don't matter enough to be heard, understood, or included. This feeling of being cast aside can trigger a powerful sense of isolation. The person who has been rejected may withdraw from social situations or retreat emotionally, fearing that opening up again will only lead to more hurt. The distance they create in the aftermath is not just physical, but emotional. It's a wall they build to protect themselves from further pain, but it also prevents healing, leaving them alone with their hurt and confusion. Rejection can also distort how a person views their future relationships. If rejection is not properly processed, it can lead to a heightened fear of future vulnerability. The next time they are faced with the possibility of opening themselves up to someone new, they may be paralyzed by the fear of being rejected again. This fear can cause them to hold back, to hesitate, and to close themselves off, even when the opportunity for connection is present. They may start to believe that no one will truly accept them, or that they are destined to be overlooked. This internalized fear becomes a barrier that prevents them from fully engaging with others, perpetuating the cycle of emotional distance. On a deeper level, rejection can erode a person's sense of trust not only in others but in themselves. When someone experiences rejection, especially in a deeply personal way, it can leave them questioning their judgment, their decisions, and their ability to read people. They may begin to second guess their instincts, feeling unsure of what is real and what is not. This self-doubt can extend into all areas of their life, affecting their personal and professional relationships, their self-esteem, and even their ability to take risks. The lingering effects of rejection often manifest as a pervasive uncertainty that colors how they approach future opportunities and relationships. Moreover, the emotional scars of rejection can sometimes lead to a chronic sense of feeling less than. In the absence of acknowledgement or validation from others, the person may start to define themselves through the rejection rather than their own inherent value. They may internalize the experience, assuming that there is something wrong with them, that they are not worthy of love, success, or happiness. The rejection becomes a label they carry with them, shaping their view of their identity and their future prospects. In this way, rejection goes from being an external experience to something that becomes deeply internalized, shaping their self-concept in ways they may not even realize. The impact of rejection can also have a profound effect on a person's behavior and relationships. They may begin to mirror the patterns of rejection they've experienced, becoming overly cautious, defensive, or detached. They may struggle to trust others or fear getting too close, anticipating that they will eventually be hurt. This defensiveness can create a barrier that prevents the development of healthy, open, and honest relationships. Instead of embracing the possibility of connection, they begin to protect themselves by shutting others out, reinforcing their belief that rejection is inevitable. Lastly, rejection can have a physical toll on the body too. The stress and emotional pain caused by being rejected can trigger a cascade of physiological responses. From disrupted sleep patterns to increased anxiety or even depression, the body and mind respond to rejection as a traumatic event. The emotional exhaustion from carrying the weight of these feelings can manifest in ways that affect a person's physical well-being, further compounding the difficulties they face in the wake of rejection. It's a reminder that the impact of rejection isn't just an emotional experience. It can manifest in physical ways that are just as real and debilitating. Ultimately, the unspoken impact of rejection is far more profound than what meets the eye. It seeps into a person's sense of self, their relationships, and their emotional health. It's a deep and often silent wound that takes time to heal, and during that time, a person may struggle to feel whole again. The effects of rejection are not easily visible, but they shape how we see ourselves and others in ways that extend far beyond the moment of being turned away. And yet, these effects do not define us. The process of healing from rejection, though difficult, can also be transformative, leading to a deeper understanding of our own worth, resilience, and capacity for connection. Healing through connection is one of the most powerful and transformative experiences we can have as human beings. When we are hurting, when we are broken, when we are struggling to make sense of our emotions, the simple act of reaching out to someone and allowing ourselves to be seen can begin the process of healing. Connection, at its core, is about more than just sharing space with others. It is about sharing vulnerability, sharing pain, and most importantly, sharing the human experience. When we connect with another person in a meaningful way, we tap into the deeply ingrained need we all have to be understood, to be acknowledged, and to be accepted. Often when we are in pain, our instinct is to withdraw. We isolate ourselves, thinking that our suffering is something we must bear alone. But in those moments, the healing we need most often lies not in solitude, but in connection. It is through the simple act of letting someone in, whether it's a friend, a family member, a therapist, or even a stranger, that we begin to feel seen, heard, and understood. There's immense power in sharing our stories with others, in speaking the truths we've kept hidden, and in finding a compassionate listener. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same. And in that space, healing begins. Connection helps to normalize the experience of pain. When we feel isolated in our suffering, it can feel as though we are the only ones carrying such a heavy burden. The shame, the fear, and the loneliness can intensify, making it harder to move forward. But when we share our experiences with others, we often find that we are not alone. Others have faced similar struggles, have walked similar paths, and have come out the other side. Their stories become a source of hope, showing us that healing is not only possible, but that we are not the only ones who have ever felt this way. This shared understanding can lift us up, reminding us that we are part of something greater than our pain. Healing through connection also means allowing ourselves to be held in our moments of weakness. It's easy to believe that we need to be strong, that we need to have it all together in order to be worthy of love or support. But true connection is built on the recognition that we are all human, and that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of courage. When we open ourselves to others, we give them permission to offer us their strength, their comfort, and their empathy. We allow them to hold us when we cannot hold ourselves, and in that act of kindness, we begin to heal. The embrace of a friend, the understanding in a partner's eyes, the support of a community, they all become powerful agents of change in our healing process. Moreover, the act of healing through connection doesn't always require words. Sometimes simply being present with someone is enough to create a space for healing. It's in the quiet moments, the unspoken exchanges, that we can feel the weight of someone else's care and presence. A hand on a shoulder, a knowing look, or simply sitting together in silence can convey more than words ever could. These moments of connection are a reminder that healing is not always a linear process, and it doesn't always require a solution. Sometimes it's just about being with someone in their pain, offering a quiet space for them to feel seen and supported. These moments of connection are not just acts of kindness, they are acts of healing. When we open ourselves to connection, we are also opening ourselves to growth. Through connection, we gain new perspectives on our pain, on our struggles, and on our journey. The feedback, support, and insights we receive from others can illuminate parts of ourselves we may not have been able to see before. We begin to recognize that our pain does not define us, it is part of our story, but it is not the whole of it. Through the support of others, we are reminded of our strengths, our resilience, and our capacity to heal. We learn that healing is not about erasing the pain, but integrating it into our lives in a way that allows us to grow and move forward. Connection also teaches us about forgiveness, both of others and of ourselves. When we connect with others, we are reminded that everyone is carrying their own burdens, their own struggles, and their own imperfections. In that recognition, we find the space to offer compassion, not just to others, but to ourselves. We learn to let go of the judgment we hold towards ourselves and others, understanding that we are all doing the best we can with the tools we have. Through connection, we are able to release the weight of resentment, anger, and self-criticism, allowing ourselves the freedom to heal and grow without being weighed down by past hurts. One of the most powerful aspects of healing through connection is that it is not a solitary endeavor. It is something that we do together. We may start alone, but the process of healing is most powerful when shared, whether it's through the comfort of a loved one, the support of a community, or the understanding of a stranger. Healing is a collective process. When we open ourselves to others, we tap into the collective strength of humanity, reminding ourselves that we are not alone in our struggles, that there are others who care, who understand, and who are willing to walk alongside us in our journey. As we reflect on the healing power of connection, we begin to understand that our journeys, no matter how difficult, are never meant to be walked alone. It is through reaching out, through opening ourselves up to vulnerability and compassion, that we allow healing to take root. The connections we form, whether with others or with ourselves, are the foundation upon which we can rebuild, grow, and move forward. Each moment of honesty, each shared tear, each empathetic word brings us one step closer to healing the wounds we carry. So I encourage you to lean into connection when you're hurting, when you're lost, when you feel like you can't go on. Seek out the people who see you for who you truly are, and don't be afraid to be seen in return. Allow yourself to be both the giver and receiver of compassion. For in the spaces we share, we discover not only healing, but also our shared humanity, our capacity for resilience, and our profound ability to love and support one another. Together we can heal, and together we can grow,